Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to another AMA panel hosted by EGD. We'd like to welcome Kevin Wong, and he is a game designer and producer based in California. He's had a background at USC and UCSC, and he has done a lot of projects, seeing that he has two different resumes online. And so Kevin, I want to get it off the bat. How are you during this pandemic?
I'm all right now. Just I'm holding up well. Things have been still busy on my end, but I was already working from home for like a long time before um, quarantine started.
Oh wow. So that's
Mhm.
about like three-ish months, 4 months already?
Yeah, the stay-at-home orders happened around like about 4 months ago.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, what is like one thing that you like miss, I guess, pre-quarantine?
Um, I guess hanging out with friends and folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone misses that.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see. How did you get started in like your passion and in your career? Like, was there specific games or like certain people that you looked up to that you're like, oh hey, I want to like be a part of that?
Uh, Yeah, I guess one way that I ended up going into games, um, uh, like I think my interest in game design actually was more rooted in a prior interest that I had in writing and politics and stuff like that.
Oh,
Back in high school, I what a personal project of mine was to write a open letter or petition every single year to about an issue that I cared about or was interested in. And in 2010, it was the Brown versus EMA Supreme Court case, which would have affected First Amendment rights for game developers by putting restrictions on the sale of violent games to children. And uh, the subject, and I wrote a letter to California State Senator Leland Yee, um, at, because of that, arguing for my perspectives on the issue. I ended up having a meeting with his office shortly in around December of I think 2009 or 2010. And while not much convincing happened in that particular meeting, I did end up finding what in that conversation I did end up challenging myself to like go into games myself, since that was always like that was somewhat of a loose interest that I had um, on my own creatively, and that one thing led to another. That led one thing led, and I ended up going to USC's games program for college. Uh, there, I received a really wonderful education from some really great professors, and that's more or less where the roots of my time in games came from.
oh, okay, I see. And speaking on education, so I was wondering if you had any like opinions on getting into the gaming industry without like a formal education.
I, I think, yeah, I think having worked at several places, a lot of my coworkers were autodidacts or came from um, fields like computer science, history, or theater, um, uh, a- and ended up in games uh, through other means than like the uh, than game school. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that comes down to what your interests are, what your preferred learning style is, and what kind of environment you succeed best in. For those people, uh, going into games through like a college major that wasn't necessarily games worked out well for them. But I think for certain people who need that level of support and community, game school could be right for them.
Oh, I see. Do you have like any sort of like advice to those who are trying to get their like foot into the industry that are like students now?
Yeah, I think one thing that is super important is to support your friends and colleagues and uh, learn for them and care about their careers and um, do your best to build them up. Since uh, I've always found that a sense of like mutual support
Yeah.
with the people around you gets you further in your career than trying to like impress people already in power or people who are already very influential within the industry itself. Um, uh, and the connections that I had that I built at USC end up um, being very important uh, to getting to where I am now because we were constantly trying to like support each other, afford each other to opportunities, and recommend each other and work with each other because we all um, worked well with each other and um, wanted to see each other do well, succeed, and grow.
Yeah, I definitely agree that tight-knit community is definitely important into propelling into, your passion career. So that's a really good answer. We do have some questions in the server. See from Ben, what was the most challenging thing to work on when it comes to your recent project, Manifold Garden?
Yeah, yeah. With regards to Manifold Garden, I'm a I was like a contractor slash freelance producer for various indie games.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, worked, I worked on Shibara and Luca Born of a Dream before that, and I did freelance production and consulting work for a number of other smaller unreleased indie games. And Manifold Garden, I ended up working on yeah, because they needed production help during the last few months of their development as they were preparing to release their game on the Epic Game Store and Apple Arcade. I can't go into too many of the specifics, but I, but I would say the biggest challenge that I had uh, when I was very active on that project last summer was scheduling and planning so that we could
Yeah.
fulfill the uh, the requirements um, that the platform holders had while staying on schedule uh, uh, with a fairly substantial amount of work to do. That resulted in us having to be very deliberate about what um, we committed our time to, since we didn't want anyone to crunch, and we wanted to um, have a very clear vision of like what our remaining tasks were in order for us to release the game on time.
Oh yeah. Crunch
Yeah,
time. Oh my gosh. Oh, how I've heard that
yeah.
term. How do you even deal with that?
Well, we didn't crunch on Manifold Garden,
Mm.
thankfully, because of very deliberate planning and pacing. I can't go into too many of the specifics, but uh, but I would say having a clear central plan and acknowledging what we don't you don't necessarily have time for is super critical in ensuring that um, things come out with minimal hitches.
Yeah. I feel like time management and just like making sure you don't stray away from goals is such an important thing that we often like kind of just have it on the side burner and we just forget about it. and come
Yeah.
back to it later. So I definitely feel that. We actually have another question. What are your thoughts from Max? So what he says, what are your thoughts on games as an educational platform on various political subjects? Like any creative form, they have a huge potential for giving creators a chance to speak out, which has definitely been tapped into already. But how do you think this is best encouraged? And are there any games you can think of that especially do a good job of meeting the audience when they're at in terms of knowledge and engagement with the topic? A very long one. Sorry.
Mhm. Um, I, I can't. I honestly can't say that I'm as conscious about educational games as I, in order to confidently answer this question. There are a lot of personal, expressive, agitprop games like Celestias that I think are really wonderful, and do some really excellent, I guess, politi- political work. But I wouldn't necessarily um, consider them educational, as in like in a very didactic way. They are educational in that the games like Means TV's Tonight We Ride, I think, are really wonderful and educational as a tool to communicate political perspectives and advocate towards a particular cause. Um, but I think that's different from the conventional approaches to educational games that I'm most that I'd say dominate a lot of the discourse. I'm sorry if that's not a satisfying answer, but I don't want to uh, speak about stuff that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, no worries. We actually have another question from Twitch user Celeric. Hi, Kevin. There isn't really a degree path to becoming a producer, but there are skills of the trade. In your eyes, what are critical skills that make some producer material, and how did you build yourself up in those areas?
Yeah. Before I was a producer, I worked as a designer. I worked as a designer on The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, as well as a number of other uh, VR games and student projects, and that exposed me to a consciousness about what exactly it takes to build a game, and what things like the art, sound, and the production pipelines are, and being broadly familiar with all aspects of that ended up being really helpful to me with regards to understanding what capacities a team has, as well as what uh, uh, it takes to accomplish a certain documented uh, vision of a project. And I think, and you don't necessarily need to be like a master of those other disciplines. Just having like basic literacy and vocabulary in those other fields, I think, will serve people really well. Um, Other than that, being conscious about like how much work it takes to build something, as well as being really good at communication and and, and ensuring that everyone has a clear understanding of what the status of the project is and what the steps to the future are like. Um, there are also a lot of very formalized frameworks and production methodologies for developing games um, a- like Agile Scrum and Kanban. I'm not as familiar with that as I could or should be, but I do recommend looking into that uh, if you're interested in producing at a professional capacity.
Yeah, I think project management is like something that I always see when I look at like producer stuff for gaming, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like it looks so extensive. Uh
Mhm.
What is some what is something that on games that you feel take a lot of effort to like design but is never really like appreciated?
Um, a lot of effort. Can you repeat the question
Yeah,
or clarify?
what is something that when you design a game takes a lot of effort to put in but is never like appreciated when like it comes out?
Uh, um, I think one thing that took a lot of effort in all the games that I've worked on is actually like very low level underlying stuff, like menu systems, performance, or user backend type stuff. Very little attention ends up being paid towards uh, things like very basic things like controller uh, support and fulfilling certification requirements successfully. But that stuff is super important because if you don't fulfill those requirements, your game can't come out. Um, and I think having like a production methodology and plan that accounts for fulfilling all of those requirements very early in the process will result in projects that are much more pleasant to be a part of.
Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
definitely agree with you on that. I feel like it's just a lot of people just see what they play and they don't appreciate what is actually going on behind like the scenes. Uh so from Leanne, we have since you have worked in both game production and design, what are your favorite aspects of both?
Yeah, and when it comes to game production, I really like how people facing it is. I really like um, more or less creating the work conditions that can support people and ensure that they succeed and enjoy being part of a project. I would back when I was a student, I know I worked on more frustrating directionless projects that lacked very clear central planning and leadership, and that resulted in meandering productions that felt fairly aimless until they came together at the last second. And while I have heard that that's like something that's endemic to a lot of complex projects, I don't really think it necessarily needs to be that way. And I think letting developers the structure that they need in order to um, uh, feel that their contributions and work have a meaningful impact, um, it is super important. And I think having stuff like a clear project path uh, um, that they're making uh, strong progress on can help create those the types of creative environments that I think um, people would be very comfortable with. Um, in terms of what I like about design, I I do like I've always found stuff like game feel and uh, very nuanced stuff very interesting to work on, and that's something that I've always really enjoyed being attentive towards in the larger productions I've been part of.
Yeah. So we have another one from an EGD member. What are some ways those who are still students in high school can improve their skills as a developer? I've grown up with games and want to make it a career, but I'm not sure where to begin.
Yeah, yes. I think one of the best ways to get exposed to building games is to just start building things yourself. There are a lot of the tools and you need to make games are free and very accessible. Things like Unity and Unreal are available for free download, and those are the same tools that people use within the industry. Outside of that, there are also a lot of wonderful accessible tools like Twine, Game Maker, and RenP that you can use that are very easy to learn and customize to make your own stuff. Um, uh, Tutorials for that are free. There are lots of good ones on YouTube and such, and I would definitely investigate that if you're interested in learning more about what it's like to build games. Zoe Quinn actually has a really great website uh, that works as a great tool for learning how to get started making your own independent games.
Wow, so everyone basically start now.
I mean,
So
I mean,
oh
you
yeah,
don't. I mean, you don't need to follow through with it. You just like give it a spin and see if it's right for and if it sticks.
yeah. It's
There's
like trial and error.
like there's so much cool stuff in the world that if it's not right for you, that's still wonderful. But this is, but I think the bar for experimenting with games has never been lower. You should. I think. Uh, I think the easiest tool to actually start building stuff, it might actually be this tool by MIT called Scratch, which is like a drag and drop coding interface that's mostly used to teach programming to grade schoolers. But that's a wonderful, great first tool to play around with. And you could do stuff like, and what good exercises could include things like um, cloning a classic game like Space Invaders or Pong and giving it your own spin by like changing the art or modifying the rules or stuff like that.
The world is out there. And we have another question from Max. What are some of your favorite memories working within the games industry?
Um, I I think I might skip this question since I
Yeah,
haven't been in the industry long enough to authoritatively say anything quite yet.
no
I
worries.
apologize.
No worries. Oh my gosh. Let's see. This is a funny one. What is your favorite t-shirt and why? From Steven.
Um, Felix Kramer made this T-shirt several years ago, that had like the text, um, "Cuties killing video games," and I
Oh, we have
thought,
to see that.
yeah, it's really wonderful and fun, and that was made in response to harassment that people were getting uh, from like the Toxic Gamer folks.
Yeah.
That like these SJWs are killing video games, and I think it's wonderful to like take that and roll with it and have a sense of humor with
Yeah.
regards to it. Since I think that atti- attitude is courageous and refreshing in its own way.
Yeah. Is this
Mhm.
in the panel questions, is that the shirt? I think
Yeah,
Ben
that's
posted a
it.
photo. Oh my goodness. Yes, it is the shirt. So, knowing that you've been working like on video games, I feel like you're so like very involved with like the production process. Do you still have time to play like video games in your free? I know it's like video games like 24/7, but do you have like a favorite game or are you currently playing any other games?
Uh, yeah, I don't play games recreationally very as much as I used to. But but I the last game that I really got into was Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Yes, yes. Which
Yeah.
route? You need to tell me.
I've been play. I played. I started with Golden Deer, then Black
Let's
Eagle,
go.
then
Yeah.
Blue Lions. It took me about a year to play through, but I think what that game does with branching narrative and how uh, details from one route are only are partially obscured, and you only fully understand them as you play the rest of the routes. I think that's really exciting and wonderful, and creates like this sense of intrigue and mystery that ends up being like really tragic as you don't really understand the full scope of what's really going on until you realize it and understand that like none of the protagonists really at, knew what they were getting into or were doing with the greater scope of their impact in the world.
Yeah, no, I that was actually one of my first like Fire Emblem games, and it definitely like I was like, yeah, Golden Deer only, and then I started playing the other routes, and I was just like, wait, wait, I feel something else. Okay, so this is our last like 5 minutes. We have another question from Ben. What do you think the future of the game design industry will be like post COVID? It seems like even after everything has settled, studios will struggle to put the pieces back together.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think uh, would would be interesting to consider is the fact that because of the associated recession, a lot of people won't have a lot of disposable income, and
Yeah.
that's going to impact the launches of the new consoles. Granted, early adopters have always been like very rich or affluent young people, so I don't entirely know if that's going to seriously affect like the first few months of uh, adoption. But I think um, um, maybe 1 year into like this new console generation, not we might not necessarily have the same numbers that we did at this time in the previous generation,
Yeah.
largely because there would be fewer people with the kind of disposable income to pick up a new console. So I think
True.
that's definitely going to be something to consider on, and I think that is definitely like a trend to be conscious of, and I'm interested in seeing how that plays out. Aside from that, I do think the work from home um, capacities might stick around in some form or another, um, or that's like pe- people might work from home on some days or all the time. I think that's one thing that might definitely change post COVID.
Yeah, I feel like COVID made like the workspace realize, oh, we could do some of these just from home. Like we don't need to like go out and all that. Like go out to the office and stuff like that. So it's really interesting point. Uh Kevin, do you have like any like or like any socials you want to promote or like any like contacts you would like to share with us so others could, contact you for if they have any other like questions?
Yes, I'm at that Kevin Wong on Twitter. Same as my Discord handle right here.
Okay, cool. Coming off in that, oh, we actually have one more question. Um, Coming off that question, oh, wait, do you have a live-in coworker and it's labeled pet? Do you have a
I
do
do
you
not.
have pets? Okay.
Do not. Do y'all?
Oh, I wish I had a pet,
Yeah.
but
Apparently, people are concerned that like once things go back to normal in a year or so, that leaving pets alone for most of the day as people go back to offices will be really, really hard on those animals.
Oh yeah, that's true. I didn't think of your dog. Your like dog or cat will be like, where'd you go? O- okay, Kevin. So, do you have like any closing remarks for
Um,
us? Any
none,
advice?
none in particular. I thank you for having me. This was fun, and I hope that y'all continue to um, uh, uh, work well together and enjoy your time learning about this wonderful world of games.
Most definitely, most definitely. Thank you so much for joining. Ben, do you wanna transition? 5, 4, One. Hi, everyone. So, this is the second part of our AMA today. And for this second part, we're talking to Atlas Chen, who recently, actually, his game Sky won a Games for Change awards in People's Choice and Best Gameplay. So, congrats. It's pretty
Thank
crazy.
you.
That's so good. And I just want to thank you for joining us and, giving us like some insight on how to successfully or like, make our way through to the gaming industry. So thank you for coming. Uh
Having me.
yeah, of course. So I was just wondering, so how are you? How are you during this pandemic? Has anything really changed for you, or like how are you coping with like this weird timeline we're in?
I see. Thanks for the question. I think I'm doing pretty well right now. I do worry about the worst situation that everything is going on, but I feel super lucky to be in the game industry that we are able to work from home,
Yeah.
and also our company kind of took the action much earlier than a lot of others. So we are pretty good right now. There are some challenges during this time. It's like how do you coordinate with other people, and we are onboarding new hires as well. And some of our new hires are actually we never met in person yet.
Oh yeah,
We
that's
interview
very
them
true.
through the yeah, the onboarding process is all through online meeting. But
Yeah.
so far so good. It's actually quite efficient in a way that everyone can actually see each other in one screen, and and also as game developers, you can share what you are working on your screen via the conference app, and that is super like just something that we didn't have when we sit in the meeting room, and I cannot share my work immediately when I want to present it. So in a weird way that I kind of feeling that is different, but it has the benefit. And but in the other side, I do miss seeing people in face.
Yeah. I think all of us do too.
Right.
Uh so we already have some questions rolling in. Question one from Steven. Does Atlas Esports owe you royalties? Oh,
That's a very good because I hope so, but probably don't. No.
true, true. All right, another question. What was working on Skylike and what type of difficulties came about from developing a game during COVID-19?
That's a very good questions. I think working on Sky, the best thing is that I'm working on something that I truly believe in, and I really think that we are doing something that is benefiting the players and the society, uh, and also it kind of like set an example for the industry to look at these kind of games to be a possible way uh, of doing business. And I really feel that there's quite fulfilling to work on a project like that. It is also very challenging that there is not that much similar games that we can look at, and we have to basically explore and do a lot of R&D to find a way. And a lot of times we are wrong about our design, and we tried it out and we failed.
Mm,
It took like 7 years for this game to launch.
seven
I was
years.
yeah, that was just hard of that long journey. It's a really long time of research and design, but I think it's a huge kind of a pain off at the end that um, after releasing it right now, it feels like we have a really, really positive community.
Yeah.
my colleagues who work on the community team say that it is the best community she saw in her career. That everyone was so positive, that they kind of like, it feels like when you have the good intent for the better of the and they're paid off, and the good heart comes back. As to the, yeah, there's a lot of like other things that I can talk about. That's a really big question. For the second question, then I think difficulties. I don't know. I think it's more about getting used to a new way of like working remotely. I think one part of that is like communication is something that we are still exploring to make it better. Like normally when we were in the office as a small team, we talk to each other during lunch and we share what we are working on during our break. And sometimes we just take a walk out and talk to each other. But when you are sitting at home, you don't have that kind of a water cooling talk to each other. And those kind of like random opportunity to pick up information is gone. So you have to set up like regular check-ins with people to be more proactive in that way. But sometimes it's really hard to see the things that you don't see. Like if I am in the office, I see someone who feels stressed out or someone feels super happy. I know there's something happening. I can talk to them and share that. And there might be a problem or something that I can help, or there might be some good things I can share with the whole studio. But in the kind of online setting, I feel that my communication kind of limited to my own team, which is the design department more, and to other departments leadership. But I have less opportunity to talk to each single colleagues compared to before.
Yeah, no, I feel that there is some sort of sacrifice with moving everything to online, and I definitely can see where it could be an issue for you. We have another question from Leanne. What kind of inspiration do you draw from outside media slash things and then incorporate into your games?
Yeah, I think I draw a lot of those inspiration from things that is not in games. Actually, I feel that like personally, like not just Sky, but the other games I work on. I work on the custom campaign for Age of Empires, just as a hobby since age of 12, and I read a lot of history stuff, and I was really into mythology, and also sometimes even a kind of a TV episodes of a random thing could give me a very interesting narrative plots that I want to use in my game. I just feel that anything like games are so diverse, and the only thing that prevent you from making anything is your brain, your creativity. So you can draw inspiration from anywhere. I get to read the books from Joseph Campbell's from a very young age, and he is a kind of a methodologist, kind of a comparison or a methodologist. He is like looking at all the different myths in different cultures and different kind of history, and kind of have a conclusion that he finds that all those methodologies actually have a similar structure. And he said that it's it is the common purpose of those methodology, those myths to teach people how to lead their life. That concept is really intriguing to me, and he has that pattern that is called hero's journey. Probably a lot of people
Oh
have
yeah.
heard.
Mm-hmm.
It has been used a lot in the film industry,
Mm-hmm.
and it was also kind of the inspiring sources of journey and sky for the story. And I find that I draw a lot of inspiration from Joseph Campbell, just feeling that I remember there's a saying that he said about in the ancient times, the shamans are teaching people how to live their life with myth. And in modern days, the role of shaman is replaced by artist. And I would like to consider myself an artist, even though I am not a really good painter or 3D artist. But I think designing games itself is a form of art
Oh,
of
definitely.
and I really feel that that kind of like sending the messages through a metaphor, uh, like Joseph Campbell said, gave me a lot of inspiration on that. And I believe games is a medium that can actually bring very fundamental growth for people, because it provides the opportunity to make choices in a certain context, which many other form of art or medium doesn't have. And when you make choices, I believe that you learn much more than when you passively absorbed the information.
Yeah, that's really everyone write down Joseph Campbell. I
Yeah.
definitely think you're an artist in your own because especially with how gaming is now, it's such a huge and impactful, form of learning and critical thinking. And it's very much essential since technology has been like integrated in such a way that like we can't not be exposed to it. So that's really, really,
Right.
really mm-hmm. So we have another question from Leanne. As the design team manager, what are your primary responsibilities?
I see. So my responsibilities is kind of varied. My background is designer, so I kind of like do a lot of game design, level design, system design, narrative design, a lot before I took the role of design team manager. And the manager roles in TGC is mostly like similar to a producer, but also someone who knows the craft. Um, the the idea behind that is that when you know exactly what it takes to finish a task, and how what are the risks and what is the processes of getting it done, you are a better person to manage the task and priorities for other people. So right now, my roles besides it's kind of like in two parts. One is like in the mode of a manager roles, including uh, what I see myself, my responsibility is basically empowering the design team and also other teams to be more efficient. There are two areas. Um, One is like for the design team, I need to look at basically when we hire new designers, how do I onboarding them, make them catch up to speed, and also get them to know about the company structure so that they get enough support and resources. And also in terms of with other teams, make sure that the other teams have the information they need, because design is kind of the origin of troubles, you can say. When we come out of a design, then it means like the artist need to get it working, and engineering can get to work on it, and then the QA need to testify that, and eventually the community team need to write kind of the patch notes and announcements, and PO need to work on things. So we are kind of at the starting point of a lot of tasks. And designer in TGC is traditionally most of the designers know how to code, so they can actually program prototypes and work on actual implementation and polish again when needed. So there is a kind of the communication between different teams, and we kind of like want to put the designers in a role that is basically the glue of the different disciplines, including the art teams and the engineering teams, and also the audio and music.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a passive kind of aesthetics and gameplay, that everything can work coherently together. So there is a lot of communication needed, and
Yeah.
also another part of my role is to help the team to align on the vision of design. So everyone always will have different ideas, and the creative director Genoa will have the creative vision, but there are many different ideas to go for that. And there are sometimes people have ideas that is not aligned with the vision, but it's actually really good. And how we get all those different ideas to align on the same direction and have a coherent design, so that every member can actually work towards the one direction. It's also part of my job.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of communication and foundation implementation. It's, as you said, it's kind of like the domino, like the beginning domino. So it sounds like a lot. It sounds very busy.
Recently, I just learned a technique to manage my time that
Yeah,
I
how do you
feel
do
really
that?
helpful. Uh, I learned from an advisor that I take a look on my calendar and see how my schedule is arranged. And he advised me to put it into 3 parts. One is thinking and writing. So basically, I put my thoughts into writing so that I can organize everything in my head. And the second part is communication, which is put the things in my head and other people's uh, thinking together so that we are in sync. And the third part is execution. Like I can work on the design and work on the implementation of things. Um, so when you look at these 3 parts, and then you figure out what is the best percentage of each part, it's different for different people. Kind of a general division is like 20% of thinking and writing, and maybe 30 to 40% of communication. Execution is something that you would like to delegate if you could, but it also keeps your keeps my morale high, because as a designer, I do want to be working on the hands-on project, and also that is a way for me to understand what the actual task that each of my colleagues is working on, and their difficulties that they are facing. So having a kind of a division of these 3 parts and understanding, be mindful about it, actually helped me a lot. Especially the thinking and writing gave me enough time to think about the long-term plans, not just the day-to-day firefighting stuff. And once you have a long-term plan for things, everything comes in a much calmer way. and I feel like I can handle those different tasks much better.
Yeah. Is this like the same process you deal with when, like, I know crunch is like a very big like topic in the gaming industry. Is this the same? Is this how you also deal with crunch? Or do you deal with
Uh,
crunch differently?
yeah, we actually don't crunch too much.
Okay.
Uh, our like sometimes we feel really tired just because everyone was fighting on ideas very fiercely. Everyone
Yeah.
was really critical in here when we are looking at the design. But in terms of work, like personally, like sometimes the engineering team might need to crunch because there's a bug that need to fix really quickly, or there's a server issues, or there's a bill need to roll out immediately.
Yeah.
But for design team, we haven't been really crunching for a long time since we kind of released again. Before we released it, there was some crunching happening. Um, I think it is. Yeah, we don't really have too much crunching. I think when the most crunching time was once like there was a kind of a transition of work that I was take on the new role of a design manager,
Uh-huh.
and suddenly everything I didn't work on before come into my plate. And there's also a new season we need to get out that need to be on time. And at that time, we don't have enough people as well. So kind of a lot of new things on together, and it was a really that was kind of like a few weeks I was working on like 14 hours a day, and I feel that's too much.
Yeah.
And the way I was actually sitting down, and I grabbed a piece of paper and I write down everything that in my head, like just like anything coming to my head, I just write it down, like no matter what it is. And
Uh-huh.
after like write down it like for several papers, uh, it feels like immediately I get an understanding of like what is the root cause of everything, and I make a rule that I need to fix this first. Once that is done, then everything else kind of like get much better. So I feel that like thinking and writing is really important. Even though I did that without knowing that it's called thinking and writing, but it's really
Yeah. No, that's really good. I feel like, I don't know, in American we're just so like consumed with work and stress, like it's to a point where stress kind of looks good because you're busy and
mm,
you're quote unquote productive, but I feel like we're not taught enough how to exactly cope with it. So that
right.
I didn't think of that. I should try that.
I think I made myself a rule that every day I need to have a certain day that I'm not doing work, but it is a quiet time.
Yeah.
I think it will be important that you give yourself that space and time to be with yourself, be at the present moment. It can be like a place that like a time that you're focusing on one thing that is not about work.
Yeah.
Like even if it is like you are cleaning up your bedroom, for example, like we are all quarantined in our house. We want our living room to be like clean, and and that will help you to kind of stop the rumination of the stress,
Yeah.
and once everything is calming down, you'll get a better sight
Yeah.
of everything.
Well, that's really good life advice. Because I just see it so much in the gaming industry where it's like crunch hours, it's a spiral mess. But yeah, that's really good
I feel like
points.
crunching is like sometimes it's not avoidable
Yeah.
because there is a sudden change. of schedule or something that like there's a business opportunity that you just need to catch it.
Yeah.
But if it is like everything was like already planned out and then you still crunch, then that is basically a very bad planning.
Yeah.
And also management wise, it doesn't have a good structure of checking in, like how people are doing, and not alternative plan for backing it up. I do feel that like in long term, you do want people to be able to work in a way that they don't burn themselves out.
Yeah.
It's important for people, especially in the creative side, that if you are so stressed, you are kind of a tunnel vision, and wouldn't really have that open mindset of accepting the new and risky things.
Yeah. Really good answer. I really like that one. So from Dandy After Hours on Twitch, hey Atlas, what game served as your inspiration for jumping into the games industry?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Uh, yeah, I think it's probably Age of Empires.
Oh wow.
Because I spent probably how many years? Probably more than 10 years on Age of Empires 2 and working on the custom campaign. I didn't really play that too much, but I work on the map editor,
Oh
work with the
wow.
map to make games, and it feels really satisfying to me that I can actually creating a world of my imagination and bring the joy or the sadness or whatever the emotions that I feel with other people and share my findings with other people, and eventually kind of like made me. I think that is kind of where I started, and an important part of that was actually I play a lot of other Age of Empires campaign that made by those the other players, and one of them is called Wulio. It's made by the German designer, and it was adopted from Oedipus, and the plot was so amazing that it really touches me, and I realized that games can have that potential of touching people deeply, and that is kind of the moment that I realized how powerful games are. um, I guess I didn't decided to go into the game industry in the like in my childhood. I still think that was just my hobby until then. It was kind of in my college. I was my major was biology, actually,
Yeah, I
biological
saw.
science.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I love I love all forms of lives, and I admire them. That's why I choose that major. But when I go into that major, I wasn't really expecting what and I was learning. It's
Mhm.
mostly about DNAs, proteins, and all those molecules and those solutions that I cannot even uh, really see what's going on without a kind of microscope. Um, it doesn't feel like what I was pursuing for. And uh, one day I was kind of studying all those biology books and mathematics and all those books in the classroom by myself. And I was listening to music, and there was music that I used in a game that I made in age of 13. I took a year. I spent a year to make that campaign. Really put my heart into it, And when I listen to that music, it really reminds me of the old days. And I realized that it's truly what I want to do. And then decided I need to switch my path and going to the game industry. And from that on, I kind of like just try to work towards it, get to NYU for the game design degree, and later kind of everything happens after that.
Wow. Give hope to the people. I actually started like not in gaming. I did the whole bio and chem thing too until I switched into games. So that story resonated with me a little bit.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we have another question from Twitch user Celeric. Hi Atlas, a big topic right now is games for young audiences. Do you feel that your game Sky and other games by that game company, Journey, Flow, and Flower, have a place as experiences for young children?
Hope so. I think like I remember that last year probably there was a a girl with her family visiting our offices, and she talked about how she loved Sky and playing with friends from Brazil and
Oh
another
wow.
place I don't remember. And she knows even more than me about the game. Because as designers, we are a team and we work on the different parts of the game. And she mentioned a lot of secrets. I was like, wow, you know more than me.
Oh
And
my, get her on QA.
yeah, I definitely find that she is quite an expert, and I see a lot of that happening, uh, just with young kids that they are making friends from all over the world, and they are proud of it. I also see uh, a young kid kind of post a video about how she and her grandma can play Sky together when they are in quarantine in different places,
Oh.
and that was really touching. Um, I think like Sky is we call the children of light, uh, and in my mind, like uh, I feel Sky is an opportunity for all of us to be children again. Like if you remember when you are a little kid, you go out and play uh, at a park or whenever playground, and you see another kids, and eventually, like very naturally, you become friends. You don't judge who they are. You don't judge like their family, their social status, like whether they are rich or not. You don't judge. You are just like, hey, we are playing together and we are become friends. And I think that kind of purity of mind is something we all have deep in heart. And Sky and also Journey, like to me, is a place that we are actually kind of chip away our all those differences that we kind of carry over from our life, our work, and become pure again. Um, that's what is in my mind that they are provided to. And I also see that like there was like before I joined the Econ company, I see there was a news about a little kid with autism uh, that play flower and was really um, yeah, that was an amazing moment that the game was so simple that he can even play.
My heart. Atlas, you going too deep.
Yeah,
So,
sorry,
no,
that's me.
no, all keep going. No, I feel like with creativity and gaming, a lot of like I guess the different like once you're able to communicate with like the creativity from children, I don't know, it's just definitely a uniqueness that comes with it, and it's kind of hard to have when when you grow up, and so that's really really good
Yeah,
insight.
yeah. One thing I found about children, it might be wrong. I don't know. Like my experience with children is that sometimes they are amazingly um, good at figuring out how the game work.
Yeah.
Like when we are working on mobile games and casual games, like you're always talking about like getting the player on board within like 50 seconds and get them to, otherwise they will just drop the game and move on. But actually, like when it is children, when they didn't really play too many games, they actually have the patience and curiosity to figure things out, and they're really good at it. That's kind of a surprise to me. Like sometimes even like adults wouldn't figure out something if you do not teach them very obviously. But a little kid maybe like sometimes like it's like 7 year old or 8 year old
Mm-hmm.
might just figure it out. And that's quite surprise to me, especially like when you look at many of TGC games, it's like we use very minimal text
Yeah.
and instructions. And I feel that there's a lesson for us as adults to see what we actually lost.
Yeah, no, yeah, it comes with growing up, I guess. And we kind of lose in touch. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Um, let's see. Oh, there's another question. So have any of your recent projects had moments that left a really big impact on you, and if so, why?
Mm, let me see. Like if it is recent projects, like my most recent project is Sky. Uh, the one before that was a Gemini indie game that I released before I joined TGC, which is almost 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think both of these projects have a really big impact to me. Um, I would say like Gemini was really, yeah, it was a time that I probably like knew nothing about commercial games and kind of create a company with my classmates and work on that together. It was a really, really kind of memorable time that we spent 3 years to get that game out, and there was a lot of up and downs, and it's I would say like even sometimes I feel that it was really the lowest point of my life at some time
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have income and I have like a lot of burden of like paying the tuition for my studies, and I don't have other income, and I was living on credit debt. Uh, just to try to get again out. There was a point of even hopeless, but when we really stick to the end to get it out, it really feels like, well, you can only do this like maybe once or twice in your life. it's
Mm.
a it's a huge payoff, and one thing that I think I learned a lot from that experiences, even though it's a very small scale game, but being kind of a creating a company and seeing all these different aspect of different things, not just as a designer, but also as a kind of a, uh, kind of a co-founder of a company. You understand much more uh, from the top down and the whole picture. So I think that helped me a lot when I work at TGC, that I can always relate it to what Genova was thinking from that perspective, and I understand how hard it is to be creative while you are trying to maintain a business. And that is I would say that is a really great fortune for my life to be able to spend the 3 years on an indie project. And Sky is a very different experience. At least I don't have the problem of like trying to pay the debt. I get my credit card paid off after my first paycheck, which was great. And then after that, it's like my focus is more on how to work on the game. But being in a bigger team, there's more communication. Like previously, it's mostly like I am working on that game, and I want it to be that, and it will be that. So I can decide what the game is going. But in a bigger team with a lot of talented people, you will need to figure out a way to how to get alignment. It's not consensus. You will never really get consensus of almost anything, but you need to get alignments that we all agree that this is the direction for the team to go. Otherwise, things will not move forward. And ADAPT processes, I think it's a really great learning processes for myself as a person. Like a lot of times, I feel that there's a weakness in my personality that is I cannot really say no to other people. But over the years, I learned that sometimes saying no is the most responsible thing to do and the best thing to do to actually help the team to move forward.
Wow. We're getting life advice on top of gaming industry advice.
Yeah, another way is like also you probably want to say no in an inspiring way. Just, yeah, there's a that is also something that I'm trying to learn too.
Yeah. Let's see. No, I feel like saying no is it's hard because I struggle with saying like no to someone when they ask me to give a task because I want to help, but then it sets me back. So it's just a vicious cycle coming in and out. Okay, so we have another question.
Alignment on the intention is very important.
Yeah.
When you understand the why, then saying no to the how and what is much easier. And you mostly like you approach it in a way that I understand why you want to do this, and I want to help. And there is a better way to do that. It's a more a way like sometimes we say it's yes and right.
Yeah.
That kind of opportunity that you're actually making your statement clearly and be honest. Yeah.
Wow. Huh. A new way to think of things. We have another question. When you go into the development process, do you frequently start out with fleshed out ideas and experiences you've already wanted to portray through the medium of games? Wait, through the I think I read that wrong. You've already wanted to portray through the medium of games for a while, or is it common for them to come to you as you work?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I think to me, it really depends on which project I'm working on. I kind of really like the exercise of making quick prototypes and random ideas to control. Like I don't know if any of you guys are attending like things like game jams, and I love it. And also in NYU, there was a class that I really liked called Prototype Studio. we kind of made one game each week, and the teacher Manifold was requesting us to make it in 3 hours. You cannot spend more than 3 hours to make a playable prototype. That was a really fun class I enjoyed, and every week we have one kind of a theme to pick that Benny picked for us, and we just make the prototype on it. And I really like that because it's really fun. But for the bigger project, for the kind of a longer term project, I do feel that when I work on a game, starting from the mechanics or the kind of a random inspiration that is more in the gameplay side, it feels like after working on for a long time, I feel that I lose the motivation because the game has no soul. It is kind of a toy that is interesting, it's innovative, but being interesting for the sake of interesting is not so fulfilling for me. I always see games as a way for me to learn more about the universe and myself, and also share my findings with other people. And so when it is a bigger project, I really think a lot about what is the message, what is the things that I want to share through this project. And I think that idea is something that I treasure a lot, and I really want to share. So when you have that kind of a high level message in terms of like how you execute it, what kind of gameplay mechanics it is, or what is the story, it's all derived from that. Sometimes you still do random prototyping to see what is fun, but you will always double check and come back to the high level idea. And I like to call it as a kind of a two-way approach. So one way is like the top-down approach, that you have a idea, then everything is derived from that, and then you made a story, and then you made a gameplay to support the story or support the emotion or present that or being a metaphor of that idea. That is the top-down approach. And another approach is a bottom-up, that you do a kind of a random prototype or whatever. You find what is fun, what is interesting, and do a lot of like those prototypes, and kind of find that one that you really like, and you build again upon that. Both approach has their benefits. The top-down approach will give you a very clear vision, and again could be more coherent when you build on that. The art, the story, the gameplay, everything is working towards together one goal to deliver the experience. Then you will have a very coherent game. But sometimes if you only go from that direction, you might never really reach the point that you have a playable prototype to work on, but you just keep talking about ideas. Then it will be actually really bad. So the benefit of bottom up is like the first day you have something to play with, and you can iterate on it. You can keep changing it and testing, exploring, and it also could be more creative in a way that you can come out with things you didn't expect. So I like to do both things at the same time, starting with the high level ideas, but also at the same time we start working on prototyping day one when we create a new project. And I find the process of merging these two ends to bridge them together, it's basically the process of coming out of the finished product. That's my personal processes.
Wow. Oh wow. That's a really good I guess it's always about the process that confuses like people and that people need guidance on, just because there's so much different ways you can do it. But it sounds like you have it like down to like the bone.
Right. Yeah, you need to know like the exact but you also need a very high level vision. I think both things coming together, then you have the fact what is feasible, what is not, and what is fun, what is not, and you
Yeah.
also have high level vision. I tend to do this two things at the same time. I believe like good design is a natural result of a good process. So process itself is also iterative. When you are working on something, you will look at your processes and see what went well, what didn't, and you iterate on it and make it better for the next time.
Yeah. Speaking of like the process, we have another question of like from Ben, what is the design philosophy at TDC and how has that impacted the development of the projects you've worked on?
Oh, I think uh, yeah, there's like TGC has a kind of a mission that we want to create games that create a positive impact to people, and we also want to uh, share that with the whole society that games can make these kind of changes. And to do that, there are many things you need to kind of consider first. That the game needs to be positive and with a good heart, good intent. Like sometimes we may decide that it's actually not good and make people mad, but our intention was always from the good side. Um, we try to provide something that can actually inspire people. And the other thing is that we want the game to be inclusive. It is not just for people who already really into gaming, but also for people who might have misunderstanding or wrong perception of what gaming is. And they can step into the game and see, oh wow, video game can be like that. Otherwise, we are not really making an impact to the society. And also, I think for us, games itself is really important. Uh, like especially for me personally, I always ask myself the question, like if what I want to do is share a message or tell the story, why don't I go and write novels? Why do I become a game designer? Uh, I found that answer when I was in the game design class at NYU when we learned about the procedural narrative. That actually games can tell the story in a way that other medium cannot do, which is through gameplay, through the rules, through the way that things interact. It is a statement. And also, another important thing is that the player's choice. You are making the choices, just like I have mentioned previously. So, so I find that, like as a game designer, I really want to go to the core of like what games can provide, and I think that is also uh, part of the DNA of TGC, that we are not just trying to make something like a playable movie or uh, interactive texture adventure,
Mm.
but we are actually using gameplay as a what we call part of the instrument of the whole symphony. Like there are amazing visuals and musics, all of them, but gameplay is always a very important part. Think about Journey when you are sliding down the sand
Yeah.
movement. that feeling is a very important part of delivering that emotion in addition to the music and visual experiences. So I think that's my understanding
Yeah.
of the philosophy behind this. It's really from the love for people, for our players, and also the love for games as a medium.
Yeah. Speaking of journey, we have one final question from Kira. I haven't been able to listen in, but I heard you were able to work on Journey. I'm an audio person, and I was wondering if, as a design manager, if you had any contact with that part of the team and what that was like, since I know that sound design is very dynamic and integral to the gameplay.
Oh, I actually didn't work on Journey. I joined EDC during the development of Sky, and I did try at the beginning. Actually, I tried like 4 years ago. So, but I know about Journey because I watch a lot of talks about Journey's development, and talk to the my colleagues who work on it, and talk to Genoa about it. And myself, my own thesis project, Gemini, was inspired by Journey. So that's also part of the reason that I really admire it again and started it. If you want to know more about that, there are a lot of talks in the internet that did, and maybe other team member did, that could maybe give you some more information.
Okay. I think that is our last question. Atlas, did you have any closing remarks for us? Any advice you want to say? Anything on your mind that you'd like to give us?
I'm just very happy that you are having me here. I live in New York for 4 years. This invitation made me feels that I am coming back to New York City.
Yeah.
Also to talking to you.
Thank you. It really sounds like you're very in tune with your craft, and I think a lot of us like really appreciate, because we see or we hear the passion that you have for what you do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Ben, did you wanna? I'm not sure how to. This is my first time moderating, so nope. That's okay. Cool. Yeah. So thank you for everyone that came. Please definitely come to our next AMA talk, and also we do have a GoFundMe page up to support our community, and yeah, just check it out on our link tree. And Atlas, if you want to put any socials, or if you want to put any contacts on the industry chat, so you can provide like resources that we could reach out again, or like have other students reach out, can you please do that?
Yeah, well, I'll put it up.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right then. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Atlas.